reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Dr. Chairman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'm Ed Weiner, and I'm chairman. And along with me remotely, our board members, David McSweeney, who is vice chair, Dr. Wayne Saltzman, Libby Wallenjevitz, Mary Beth Welch, and also with us is Susan Luminella, our Director of Public Health, Christine Mathis, our environmental engineer, Marlene Johnson, our health agent, Sarah Cordamach, our administrative professional, and Dawn Cathcart, who is our recording secretary. I also, as I do every meeting, thank you to all of the outstanding BCAT professionals who work so hard to make this program and many other news programs within Burlington possible. We are still operating in a declared state of emergency with special rules for public meetings. Mr. McSweeney, who is our Board of Health Vice Chair, will provide the legal requirements for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Burlington Board of Health is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the orders. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by tuning into the BCAT Government Cable Access channel, the BCAT Government Meetings Facebook live feed, or over the phone at telephone number 408-418-9388, meeting number 129-948-5308. That's 408-418-9388. Meeting number 129-948-5308. We will also be monitoring the comments on Facebook Live to see that there are any that the board may wish to address. And as a reminder to the entire board that all votes are required to be done by roll call. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. McSweeney. As I've said many times, please note we are live on BCAT and available for comments and questions through this amazing video technology. Everyone, again, as I have said many meetings, remote meetings and chairing remote meetings are not easy. Preparation is many times that of an in-person meeting. Please understand, we're doing the best we can. We're all in this together. First, we have minutes from February 23rd, 2021. Are there any omissions, corrections, or additions?
Mr. Chair, there is just one.
Yes, Mr. McSweeney.
Under the environmental engineer's report, it's approved 5-0 and it should be 3-0, just a minor change. We should make sure that's corrected.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cathcart, did you get that?
Yes, I'll make that change. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But with that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion approved by Mr. McSweeney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Libby Wallenjevitz. All in favor, Mr. McSweeney.
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman.
Abstain.
Thank you. Libby Wallenjevitz.
Aye.
Mary Beth Welch.
Abstain.
And I vote aye. 3-0-2, please. Okay, citizens' time. Is there anybody on this call or any other remote facility that would like to address this board, individuals that are not on the agenda? Sarah Cordamash, do you see anybody remotely that we cannot see?
No, I do see a caller on the line, but they are muted. So if they would like to speak, please unmute yourself.
I see them, but I don't hear them. So I'm going to assume that they are one of the people who is on the agenda this evening. Unless they have just unmuted. No, they have not. The next is Chairman's report. I have two parts of the Chairman's report, and I think they're very important. I'm going to give the first general one and speak about our vaccine, and then I'll ask for any comments, and then we're going to talk. Then I'm going to bring up the Associate Director of Public Health position because I have worked today with our town clerk to map that process out. I'm going to update those people who may be watching or may be watching later this week. We continue to face many new, never-be-seen challenges, but the Board of Health is meeting all of these challenges head-on, using innovative plans that we have developed well before this pandemic. We are expert, but we don't think that our leadership in the State House, the governor or lieutenant governor, is using us at our expertise. I can tell you that we have done so far in the pandemic 12 vaccine clinics. Our state leaders have now essentially shut down Burlington's and every other municipal vaccine program. The leadership does not communicate nor respond to our state representatives, state senators. I can tell you the Representative Gordon and our Senator Cindy Friedman have represented Burlington very well. And now our congressman has entered the fray. I called his office today to get an update. They were not in, and I will send you that update as soon as I receive it. Last week, Susan Luminello and I attended a meeting with and spoke at a meeting that Congressman Seth Moulton's staff put together. We were joined by many mayors, city and town managers and administrators, and I'm not sure where that has gone right now. This board has been featured or quoted in support of our town in local and regional meeting, and I have heard from people all over the country. We've done everything possible to represent our community's interests, including help for our seniors, needy, those with comorbidities, and everyone of all ages that we represent. Tonight, Susan will report on a small amount of federal vaccine for our senior housing seniors that may be coming our way. So with that, I'm going to open this to the board for comments before I go on to part two. Anybody would like to comment on anything I said or would like to bring up? We don't have a discussion agenda item tonight. David, Wayne, Libby, or Mary Beth, do you have any comments? Then I'll move on with just one comment. We have been on every media that you can think of, from the Herald to the Globe to WHDH to WBZ Radio, and we've done everything we possibly can to help this community. The second portion of my chairman's report is an update around the Associate Director of Public Health position that has recently been approved to assist us. I talked with our town clerk, Amy Warfield, today, and I'm going to put the following in writing unless anybody has something to add to it. Our position, and that is the Associate Director of Public Health, has been posted. We have received a number of resumes and CVs. I have not seen them. we just received them. They are going to be screened by myself and another member of this board. And at the end, I'll talk about that. And then when we get a panel of candidates that we think are outstanding, we will determine a final candidate panel. The full board will interview all of those screened candidates that we feel are appropriate. We'll be able to do it not on camera because that action is not subject to the open meeting law. Now, when we finish with those screenings to put together a final panel, we can also have an executive session to discuss and come up with how we're going to do that panel or review that panel publicly. Once we do that, we'll put the final panel together and interview will take place in public on a Board of Health meeting. And whether that be regular or special, we'll talk about that at the time. And then publicly, we will vote to offer the position. As I've said many, many times, we are in no rush here. We have nobody in mind. I promised town meeting, I promised this community that we would pick an outstanding candidate, somebody that we can be very proud of having on this staff, somebody who will be in a leadership position for this community. So that's where I am right now. Just to reiterate, each member, we will be all together to interview every candidate that we feel that has made our cut. When we have a panel of 4 or 5 or 6, and then we will put together a final panel, and that will be done publicly. Does anybody have any comments at all? Susan, I spoke to Susan Numinello today about that, and she agrees that this is a good way that every member of this board has input. The person who worked very hard on putting together the job description, who stood next to me on every single board that we had to get approval through, was Mr. McSweeney. Would you like to review the resumes, CVs with me, or would you like to pass that along to somebody else?
I'm here to help in any way the chair sees fit. I am more than happy to. I'd be more involved and would love to continue, but again, that's up to the chairman's discretion, but would welcome my support.
Well, thank you. I will do that. And then once we get a group of people that are appropriate and outstanding, we'll bring it to everybody. And then first interviews will be everybody involved, which probably will mean we'll have to carve out probably an extra meeting in the next couple of months, one extra meeting, and we'll see everybody individually that we think is appropriate. Any other comments? It's been a long road, but we've to get where we are, and we're here. Okay, thank you very much. Subcommittee reports. I know we have at least one, but I have a quick question for Dr. Saltzman and Mary Beth Welch. I know that the school is starting to move forward with their position, and I was wondering whether you have heard from the school committee on any at all yet for your subcommittee.
I haven't heard anything, Mr. Chair. I don't know if Mrs. Welch has.
Mrs.
Nope,
Welch?
I have not. I have not had any contact with any member of the school committee.
Maybe.
More than happy to reach out.
Yeah, Miss Simons is the person. She is the person. You are the subcommittee to talk with the school committee, especially on the new position. And if you could possibly reach out, That would be great. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. I really appreciate that.
Will do.
Thank you. Um, the other subcommittee report, I know that our Vice Chair, Mr. McSweeney, has, and shall we hold that for our application, David?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Mr. Chairman. We can just, which is next on the agenda anyway, but we can do it all at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've got all of the housekeeping out of the way, and it only took us 16 minutes. So let's move on to applications for approval of a special permit, 174 Middlesex Turnpike, Nordblum Company. And as you know, that this property is on the corner of Middlesex Turnpike and 4th Ave. So to that end, I will pass this now to our environmental engineer. How would you like to move forward with this, Christine?
I can give a quick overview and then turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So this property is currently vacant except for some paved areas. And as you recall, it is adjacent to the Lifetime Fitness building. It is also in the vicinity of a former contaminated MCP site known as the Building 28 and 37 site. That site has been under remediation for over almost 30 years or 20 years. And it currently has a groundwater extraction and pump and treat system located just also near the site. That treatment facility will continue during construction and after construction for some time until it's deemed not necessary anymore. We do have the LSP for that site here. I'll let him go into more detail. The applicant can go into more detail on that. We also have an upgrade proposed for stormwater management at the site. Currently, there's not much, a few catch basins. The proposal is to capture stormwater from the new impervious surfaces through catch basins, water quality treatment systems. They'll be piped to a underground detention tank, if you will, that will do a controlled release of the stormwater into the existing 4th Ave storm sewer system. With that introduction, I'll turn it over to the applicant and they can fill in more details or answer questions.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's nice to see that you're all healthy. For the record, Robert Buckley, Reamer and Bronstein, attorney for the applicant. I have with me this evening from the Nordblum Company, Todd Nordblum, Todd Fremont Smith, Steve Logan. We have our site civil, Frank DePietro, as well as Jim Ash, the LSP. A little history. This is as the chair or Christine indicated, this property is located at the corner of 4th Avenue and Middlesex Turnpike and was the rezoning that was accomplished, I believe, about a year ago for additional 300 units of residential development. This is the first phase. We are currently before the planning board, hopefully winding down there. We have gone through the Conservation Commission, and I believe we've resolved their issues. We had a subcommittee meeting with the Board of Health about a week ago, and I think we went over the issues. And Christine provided us with a draft of the proposed conditions, and those have been reviewed. And it's my understanding, based upon correspondence and discussions with our development team, that those conditions are all satisfactory. I know Todd has thrown up a very brief slide presentation to provide the board with a point of reference, and I'll turn it over to Todd.
Todd, are you on mute?
Do you want me to?
He is on mute.
I see you, Todd. You're on mute. Sarah, can we?
There it goes. I think I unmuted myself. Sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Todd Fremont Smith with Nordblom. Bob's right. We just have a few slides to show, just to orient you as to the location here on 4th Avenue. This is immediately adjacent to Lifetime Fitness. This is a site that we've been targeting for an office development for over 10 years and had no luck. More recently, we've gone to town meeting to get some additional housing as part of a private-public partnership to create affordable senior housing on the site, as well as market rate housing. So next slide here, if I can. Why am I having such trouble?
We see your pointer.
There you go. So again, here's a very loose rendering of the apartment building that would be built hopefully starting this coming fall. It'd be about 167 units. It would be done in conjunction actually with Lifetime Fitness next door. So they would be our partner on this. It would be co-branded as Lifetime Living. Lifetime Living is a project that's going on around the country with Lifetime Fitness, and we're very, very excited to bring it here to Burlington. Again, here's the master plan of Northwest Park. So this yellow snake, this S, is the housing building, four-story building that would sit up on a podium, a garage podium, where the cars would park mostly under the building with some surface parking. Again, just showing the adjacency to Lifetime Fitness. And then our plan is to create sort of coagulate all the green space in one location and build a 4th Avenue Commons, which would be a public open space. And I think with that, I'll hand it over to Jim Ash to go over some of the technical aspects of this.
Yeah, Mr. Ash, to avoid a lot of questions, I hope you could go into detail, please. We spent an hour and a half with you last week or so. I think you need to do this for the other members, please.
Okay. Happily.
Thank you.
So this figure that's shown on the plan now, on the screen now, shows the location of the proposed building, although the configuration of the building doesn't match the one that Todd just showed, but it shows the approximate footprint of the total space. That's superimposed on a figure that shows essentially the extent of contaminants in groundwater that we have been monitoring, as Christine said, and remediating over the course of the past more than 20 years. The source of those contaminants were releases at former commercial industrial facilities that are shown in this plan as building 28 and 37. The location of building 37 has actually changed. That building was demolished a number of years ago and replaced with the current office building. But there were electronics facilities that managed chlorinated solvents and released those decades ago. We constructed a groundwater extraction and treatment system a little over 20 years ago, approximately. We have extraction wells adjacent to both of those buildings that extract groundwater and treat it, and then discharge that treated groundwater back into the subsurface. The contaminant condition associated with those releases is located primarily in bedrock groundwater, which is more than 50 feet below the ground surface. And that's just a function of how long ago this happened. The more shallow, overburdened groundwater, which is up to 10 feet below the ground surface or less, as you get down to Middlesex Turnpike, that groundwater is much less contaminated than the bedrock groundwater that we are extracting. We have been monitoring groundwater conditions throughout that entire plume, essentially that purple line that you see on this figure, on anywhere from a quarterly to a semi-annual basis. So we collect samples from monitoring wells throughout that. We analyze them for these chlorinated solvents, and we've been tracking the success of our remediation project. And in fact, our remediation has been quite successful over the course of that 20 years. We are seeing anywhere from 95 to 99% reductions of contaminant conditions in the source areas and a steady decline in the down gradient plume as well. We propose to continue sampling these wells, both as part of our ongoing monitoring program under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan and our reporting to the Mass DEP. But we've also proposed to do increased sampling from so-called sentinel monitoring wells. Those are the ones that I've highlighted in green on this figure, light green. And the purpose of that sampling and analysis is to confirm that none of the construction activities, the earth moving and perhaps incidental pumping of water during construction activities, has no effect or negligible effect on groundwater conditions within that plume. As I indicated in my report to the Board of Health, I do not expect there to be an effect, a significant effect of these surface construction activities on the groundwater contaminant conditions that we've been remediating and monitoring over time. But nevertheless, the Sentinel monitoring program is designed to evaluate that. For the board's history information, this Sentinel monitoring program was actually reviewed by the Mass DEP a number of years ago when the Lifetime Fitness building was constructed. And I think the town of Burlington at the time wanted to get DEP's input on that process and whether or not there were the thresholds that we were using were appropriate. So we responded to those questions from Mass DEP and actually modified and came up with threshold values, concentrations that we would look for and perhaps change our activities as a result of seeing those concentrations. We developed those thresholds in concert with the Mass DEP. We conducted a very similar monitoring program, Sentinel Well Monitoring Program, during the construction of the Lifetime Fitness project, and presented those results to the town of Burlington as we did them. That was a successful program. There were no detections in groundwater that were significantly changed by the construction activities of that project. And as a result, we anticipate that there will be little effects on the groundwater conditions resulting from this development as well. There are a number of wells, monitoring wells, that we've been using for the past anywhere from 10 to 20 years that are within the footprint of the proposed building. On this figure, those wells are shaded in pink. And prior to the construction of the work, we plan to abandon those wells, essentially drill them out so that they can be removed prior to the construction of the work and wouldn't interfere with groundwater conditions or pose a potential contaminant pathway migration pathway. There is also one extraction well that's shaded in tan on this figure right there. That's right, RW204. That well was added, I'm going to say about 6 years ago, I think, at the request of the town of Burlington and Mass DEP to provide for additional groundwater extraction in the down gradient plume to help reduce some of those contaminant concentrations before they got to the town of Burlington's well field. That well extracts groundwater and is piped underground back up to the treatment building, which is also shown on this figure. That well will remain in operation during the construction of this new proposed building. So we intentionally put it toward the outside of the property so that we anticipated that there would be a building put on this property eventually. So we put it near the edge and will protect and operate that well even during construction. If there's any reason why the building construction would have to interfere with that well, we'll be paying close attention to it. And if for any reason we would have to move it, we would construct a new well nearby and reinstall the piping and continue operating that well. I think the last issue that probably is of interest to the Board of Health that I'll discuss is the potential for vapor intrusion. This is a process whereby the contaminants that are in groundwater essentially vaporize into the soil gas and then can migrate through soil gas into a structure, into a building that's constructed over the top of contaminated groundwater. That pathway first is less likely to be of significant concern at this site because I had mentioned earlier that most of the contamination is in the bedrock groundwater, the deeper groundwater, rather than the shallow. And therefore, the shallow groundwater is producing less of that vaporized contaminant in the soil gas. Secondly, the building construction, the design of the building is designed to eliminate or at least cut off that potential pathway by putting a ground level parking garage in the building. And that parking garage essentially serves as a short circuit for that vapor to get into the occupied interior spaces. So you have a well-ventilated parking garage where if any vapors actually migrate through the slab into that garage, they're essentially ventilated into ambient air, and there's not a pathway for them to get into the occupied portions of the building. As even a more conservative approach, in the event that perhaps a maintenance building or something like that is built into the garage space, Nordblum Company is also planning to put a vapor barrier underneath the floor slab of that garage. I would call this the belt and suspenders approach. And that vapor barrier is designed to essentially seal the bottom of the slab and prevent vapors from even migrating through the slab in the first place. That's an approach that we have put onto other new buildings constructed in Northwest Park, including Building 37. In that case, it's a successful technique. There are procedures that have been done that are monitored by the Mass DEP. And so we're going to put a similar vapor barrier underneath this building as well. I think I'll stop there and see if there are any questions about any of those things that I've described.
Dr. Weiner, if I might add something to that, please. Steve
Please,
Logan
Steve.
here.
Hi, Steve.
I just wanted to mention that this project will also be constructed under the General Environmental Management Plan, the GEM plan, that we have in place with the town of Burlington. A number of years ago, when we started redeveloping the property and did the Third Ave retail and restaurants and the other residential we have, we worked with Christine and Susan and developed a plan with our engineers, with GEI and Margaret Hanley, the isosceles group, to come up with a general environmental management plan. It basically outlines the steps we would take to handle any environmental issues that we found as we redeveloped the property. So it outlines what we do if we find contaminated soil. It outlines what we do when we want to dewater and we have questionable contaminants in dewatering material. How we handle those? How do we put them in frac tanks or back in the ground? So there's all of the the potential concerns we might have about redeveloping the site on an environmental front have been addressed in this management plan, so that there's no question about what do we do if this comes up or that comes up. We've got a roadmap on how we handle all that, and that will be part of this project as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may also add that in connection with the prior approval of the office building, many of these same issues were fully vetted by the board as well as the professionals.
Yes, but this is a residential site. It's a little different. Thank you. We have two things. I know Susan. Susan, do you want to speak on, do you want to break this up into pieces? For instance, we're now talking about the general placement as well as the contamination and safety of the building. And then we could talk about the sewerage, drainage, and whatever. So, Susan, do you want to add something to this before we ask some questions around the please?
Yeah, so I just had a question for Jim. So Jim, you were talking about the action levels for the Sentinel well locations, how we came about them during the Lifetime Project and how it was reviewed by DEP. Is 1,4-dioxane an exception to that? Because I thought I read in your report that the notification level for 1,4-dioxane is doubled for the Sentinel wells. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Susan, your question, a couple of the words broke up. Could you ask that one more time? It's about 1,4-dioxane.
Sure. Yeah. So you talked about the Sentinel well locations and how the notification levels were reviewed by DEP when Lifetime came before us. Is 1,4-dioxane an exception to that? Because I thought I had saw in your report that the notification level for 1,4-dioxane was doubled because of the what you've detected there in the past. So can you talk about that a little bit? You're on mute, Jim.
Thank you. 1,4-dioxane will certainly be one of the compounds that we monitor in the Sentinel monitoring program. So it's not excluded. I don't recall the reference to a threshold that was doubled. Now, what you might be referring to is how we came up with the thresholds themselves. In other words,
I'm sorry, the notification level for 1,4-dioxane that was referred to in your report. Is that familiar, Christine? Do you know what I'm talking about in the report that Jim provided?
Yeah, so I think Jim, we're looking at your report, recent report.
yeah.
If you look at 1,4-dioxane notification level and action levels for GEI 1 and MW209B and 211B, those dioxin notification levels, 1,4-dioxane and action levels are higher than they were during the Lifetime project. Jim, you're on mute.
I'd have to go back. I don't have an answer for why they would be different from during the Lifetime Fitness project. I'd have to go back and have a look at that and get back to you about it. I know the detection limits for 1,4-dioxane are quite low. In other words, we're looking for things in the part per billion level, sometimes the part per trillion level. But frankly, I can't answer your question for why those thresholds would be different from what they were during the Lifetime Fitness project.
You're on mute, Christine.
Yeah. The thresholds are based on the recent maximums, right?
Yes, the notification levels are based on the reporting limit in the past 2 years, right? So, in other words, 2 times the maximum reporting limit in the last 2 years. And then action levels are either set to the GW1 standard for that compound or 1.5 times the maximum detected value in the past 2 years. And essentially, those were set to essentially be a signal for if something unusual was happening at the site that hadn't been detected, during routine monitoring over the past many years of sampling. So those thresholds were set so that if we saw something that was significantly different, that would be our signal to do something different, evaluate the condition. Why those thresholds were higher on the table, that's the part I'm going to have to go back and dig into it to answer your question.
It sounds like, Jim, that it hadn't changed then from lifetime. The 1,4-dioxane notification level did not change from when lifetime.
They shouldn't have. I like I said, unless it's maybe there's an error on the table we provided. I'm looking at the text of our letter to you, and it's the same thresholds that we had proposed for lifetime, and that was certainly my intent. I did not intend to change anything.
The threshold is the same at 1.5 times, but because the threshold is based on 1.5 times the recent data over the past 2 years, that actual concentration number has increased. Because the actual concentration in the groundwater of 1,4-dioxane has increased.
Okay.
But that's correct. The 1.5 times that number is consistent, and that's what was developed in conjunction with DEP and the town and the Board of Health at the time.
Okay, I get it. I'm sorry I'm slow to catch on. What you just described now makes sense. Is what happened was in the time that has passed since we submitted these for Lifetime Fitness, we updated the actual measured values in those wells to come up with new notification levels and action levels. So we updated the values to be reflective of the actual measured 1,4-dioxane concentrations within the past 2 years. And if those measured concentrations were higher than they were when we did the Lifetime Fitness project, that would be reflected in the notification levels and action levels. So that explains why the numbers changed on here. It's because the actual measured data were different here 2 years later, or several years later.
So I think, so what you're saying is because of the measured data, the actual notification for 1,4-dioxane is going to be higher than it was with Lifetime, correct?
Exactly. Now that sounds a little odd. I recognize that here, several years later, working on a new project, and it sounds like the numbers are getting higher. But this, frankly, is one of the issues with 1,4-dioxane, and the values that we're looking at are so low, right? So in some cases, let's say historically we saw, say, 4 parts per billion in a well, parts per billion. If that value doubled, in the course of the last several years to 8 parts per billion, that would also be reflected in both the notification and action levels that are recited in our letter. But frankly, the difference between 4 parts per billion and 8 parts per billion in a water sample is, in terms of its significance, is not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a change when you're talking about single digits. Even though it sounds like it doubled, it's still in the parts per billion level. So what has happened likely is in a few of those wells, some of those concentrations did, in fact, in the last couple of years, were higher than the values we had measured within 2 years of the Lifetime Fitness project. As a result, that's reflected in changes in both the notification and action levels.
Thank you, Jim.
Since we're talking about parts per billion with 1,4-dioxane, what is considered, for lack of a better word, toxic amounts for 1,4-dioxane? And I do realize that this is 50 feet down into bedrock, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, so 1,4-dioxane is an interesting compound. It's miscible in water, meaning it completely dissolves into water. It's actually not volatile. It's one of the reasons it's been difficult, frankly, to clean up. It's one of the few compounds associated with this original contaminant condition that does not volatilize into the soil gas space. So frankly, we don't measure C1,4-dioxane in soil gas, and it's not one of the compounds that would be at risk of migrating to indoor air. 1,4-dioxane is a compound that when you talk about risk levels, it has a very low drinking water standard, a very new proposed drinking water standard in Massachusetts of 0.3 parts per billion. So the pathway of concern here for 1,4-dioxane is actually in drinking water, and it's one of the reasons we've given it a lot of attention over the years, but it's not a compound that would pose a risk pathway to the development of this building.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Mr. Ash? David, Dr. Wayne, Libby, Mary Beth, do you have any other questions for Mr. Ash? I've got a couple more after you.
Not on the contamination stuff, Mr. Chairman. I think during and Mr. Ash, thanks for going through that again. We spent a lot of time during the subcommittee meeting, and I feel comfortable with how we're addressing it and the direction that you folks are going in to address any potential concerns or anything that may arise. I feel comfortable. But Mr. Chair, nothing with contamination anyway.
Mr. Ash, the parking area underneath the building will be open. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Remediation will continue during and after the project is complete?
Yes.
Have you coordinated with the other LSPs, the other historical LSPs about on record?
You say historical LSPs on record. I'm one of the original, so I've been working on this project. I designed and installed the groundwater treatment plant over 20 years ago. I guess I took over from Margaret Hanley, who was at GEI at the time I was there, and I've certainly been coordinating my evaluation with Margaret Hanley over the years. So
you don't look that old.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. White, we've had two LSPs on this site for the last 35 years. Margaret, who Christine knows, and who still works on various components of the site, and Jim. So the two are in close contact. They work together, and there's been a lot of continuity here.
Yes, Mr. Logan and Mr. Buckley and I have been talking about this for at least 33 years.
Yeah, I'll be 35 in April, so.
Last question.
How come you didn't say I don't look that old?
Mr. Rash, and I said I would ask you this question for the record. I warned you about this, and hopefully Don Cathcart will get that. But I said I would ask this one question, which would end this discussion. In your opinion, will there be any danger to any of the residents, either short or long term, due to the contamination and the design of the building?
No, not in my opinion.
Thank you very much, and I hope Don has that. Christine, before we end this discussion on the, do you have any other comments, or Susan, any other comments on this portion? Christine?
This is Christine. I do not.
Thank you very much. One other question for Todd Fremont Smith. Mr. Smith, do you still own the Lifetime Fitness site? Is that still your land?
You do not. It
You
was-
do not.
Correct.
They own it.
They do, yes.
Thank you very much. I just was wondering. Okay. Before we do the subcommittee minutes, why don't we hear about the drainage? I know there were a lot of questions on drainage, and I hope we have those answered in the year storms and whatever. So, who is going to take that?
Frank
Buckley?
DePietro,
Nice.
the Chairman, Mr. DePietro from BSC Group will respond to that.
Thank you, Frank.
You're very welcome. I'm here on my own, so bear with me with starting to share my content. Let's see if it works.
Good luck, Frank.
Good luck is certain. Let's see.
Let's make sure it's the right content.
I guess so. All righty. So, thank you, God. It's not another project or anything like that. Can you see that?
No.
Oh, well,
Strike one, Frank.
okay.
I guess you can see it though.
I thought very well. Let's see what I can do here. I knew I should have dragged the other ladies to my rescue here. Todd, can I ask for I'm sending out a lifeline. Do you have the plan I sent you earlier that you could share?
Let me look. Was it today, Frank?
Yes, it was probably about a half hour before the meeting.
Okay, hold on. Give me 10 seconds. Here it is. Got it.
All righty.
And you're talking about someone who couldn't unmute himself about a half an hour ago, so hold on.
Well, I was thinking about my 10-year-old granddaughter that I was going to give her as a lifeline next, but we'll see.
Hold on, there we go. It's tough because all these systems are a little bit different.
Okay, there we go. That's the one. Excellent. All righty, so this is the site plan, and really there are two sort of drainage areas overall. We have the area that is to the top of the page to the west. That is picked up in the storm drainage system. It is then run through deep sump catch basin with hoods. It then goes to water quality units, and then it is discharged into a drainage system in 4th Avenue. All of that meets the TSS removal requirements of both the DEP and the town stormwater bylaw. We'll come back to this in a second, but Todd, if you want to shift down towards near Middlesex Turnpike, the building itself and the second drainage system is a subsurface detention system. You can see it right in the middle, right by the 128 contour. The building drains directly into that, the roof drainage from the building. The rest of the site is picked up and run into that, again, after going through deep sump catch basins with hoods and water quality units. We're using detention on this site because we have a very high groundwater, typically 4 to 5 feet below the surface. And that does not give us enough depth to be able to put an infiltration system and then meet the standards of having 2-foot separation between the bottom of the system and the bottom, the top of the groundwater, maximum high groundwater. So it's a typical system. We have an O&M program that's tied into the approval process. There are two interesting pieces as we were going through the permitting process. We spoke with the Conservation Commission staff, and as the board well knows, there is a proposed modification to the existing Burlington stormwater bylaw. And among the items of that bylaw was in the future, there's going to be a need to address increases in phosphorus running off of sites. So the best way to do that is through groundwater recharge. We could not do that here. So what we did is we put in several locations where we had an overflow from the catch basins that went into a tree well. The tree itself is put in a medium that is highly phosphorus removal. And so it's a minimal type amount of removal, but we are using those. Those areas, if you look at the bottom of the plan there, right where the parking lot is, where the curbing is on each end, There's one right where the hand is, and on the other hand, those are 5-foot areas. During the storm, when an inch or so water gets over the top of the catch basin, the water would then flow into this tree well and bio retention tree well, and essentially the phosphorus will be removed. The system itself has an overflow, so any excess water goes back into the detention basin. So it's sort of a loop system. It's just to get rid of the phosphorus. In our subcommittee meeting, we had a discussion where there's a concern about ponding in these areas during a 100-year storm evaluation. So we went back in, we looked at what the flow would be to these areas in their 100-year storm. It ended up being anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of water. Knowing the board's concern about any kind of standing water, even though this might be only the course of a few hours to maybe 6 hours, what we've proposed is we're now going to be putting grates on top of these. These areas are 5 by 5. The tree grate will be supported, but it'll be similar to the tree grates you see along 3rd Avenue. The middle of it has a hole where the tree can grow up inside of it. And so we'll be using them here. And that will address the issue of any standing water. There is a 3rd tree grate. Todd, if you want to go back to the common area, if you wouldn't mind. And then if you wouldn't mind on the left-hand side, sort of blow that up a bit. Thank you. In the common area, which is going to be a grass area, what we're looking to do is collect the runoff mainly from the sidewalk and put it in a swale and run it down, as you can see, into a tree well, again, a 5 by 5 tree well with the same material that would take up the phosphorus. There is a swale that directs that water into that. And what we've done is the grade of the swale is relatively steep. It's about 5%, roughly 1 foot and 20. And that will convey the water, so there'll be water in the swale as it is running down into this tree well. It will not overflow from that tree well from a 100-year storm. It will go into the tree well, seep into the ground. There'll be no standing water in this swale backing out of the system. We also have an operation and maintenance plan that we will be adopting as part of this approval. And I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And thank you, Todd, for being my Vanna White here.
Questions for Mr. Pietro, who's not wearing his tie, his special ties.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
was there other additional comments before I ask some questions?
No, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Frank, thanks for going through that. I know we spent a lot of time during the subcommittee meeting around those depressions in the standing water and appreciate it. So it's not, I just want to make sure I fully understand, because this is the first I'm hearing about the recalculation. So
okay,
it sounds like you did the recalculation from a 25-year storm to a 100-year storm. And it sounds like there is going to be 2 to 4 inches of standing water for a short period of time, couple hours during a 100-year storm. And I'm assuming that if there's a 25-year storm, there is no standing water during
That's
that?
correct.
Okay. And in addition to that, there's going to be grates over these depressions so that nobody can wander into them, walk into them. Because as you mentioned, the Conservation Committee bylaws, our bylaws, require that there's no standing water around residential units, right? So there's going to be grates over this. So even if there's 2 to 4 inches of standing water, nobody can go in there or walk in there, correct?
That's correct.
Now, how deep are these depressions again? So if there's 2 to 4 inches of water?
So the way that these sort of depressions are set up, the area immediately around the tree is about an inch or so below the pavement adjacent to it. So the water flows in and goes into the ground. The area is going to have a 6-inch vertical granite curve around it. So from the bottom of the tree up to the top of the curb is about a 7-inch depth total.
Gotcha.
But generally the area around the edges will be 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches.
Great. And then it sounds like you're adding a third depression, because I believe we only talked about 2 in the subcommittee meeting.
We had 3. We always had the 2 near the front, near Middlesex Turnpike.
Right.
And there was 1 in the common area that we had shown before that was in a swale.
Oh, right. Okay. All right, and that is also going to be covered with a grate
Yes,
in the water, and I just want to confirm what I heard. The water that is running through the swale, it would not be standing at all. It would be continuing flowing until it gets to the swale, gets to the depression, to the tree well.
yeah. So we have a 5% grade is relatively steep, and we wanted to make sure the water got into the depression, the tree well, and stayed there.
Okay, and on that third depression, again, based on a 100-year storm calculation, at most it would be 2 to 4 inches of water for a couple of hours.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. McSweeney, I think that, well, does that meet your expectations?
It does. I still have concerns with any standing water, right? Because it's not just for, safety of somebody wandering in there or tripping in there or driving in there. So I do like the grates. I still have a concern of having any standing water around residential areas based upon attracting mosquitoes or whatever other issues that come with standing water. But if it's only for a couple of hours, and it's based on a 100-year storm, I believe when we had the subcommittee meeting, they were saying it was a 25-year storm, and we have those much more frequently, as everybody knows, more than 25 years. I think I can live with it. It's not the best scenario, but I think I can live with it. And again, that's my personal opinion.
Well, Frank, let me question. We're not going to see that 2 to 4 inches, correct? It's going to be below the grate.
Yes, that is correct.
Be below the grate. So
Yes,
kids cannot get into 2 to 4 inches of water.
It would be extremely difficult. They'd have to remove a 500-pound grate to be doing that.
That's it.
Yeah,
So-
and that's why, Mr. Chair, I said I was more comfortable with it. And again, if it's only for 2 hours, you're not going to have a mosquito issue. But
So for the record, the standing water issue will meet the Burlington Board of Health stormwater regulation, correct?
That's correct.
For Don Cathcart. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Christine, where do we go from here?
I'm all set. If the board has any other questions, I can be directed to any of the applicants' representatives.
We have now maybe I did this in the wrong spot, but I thought we would get the presentations first. But we have a subcommittee report that Mr. McSweeney can just quickly review, and then almost in noting that everything has been met. But Mr.
yeah, I
McSweeney-
mean, sure. And again, we cover most of what we covered in the subcommittee here in this meeting. We spoke. I think there was 2 areas we spoke an amount of time on in the subcommittee. One was around the contamination, and again, I think they have addressed all of our concerns as relates to the vapor and there's no structures underground and all those sorts of things. So we spent a lot of time on that. I think we left there feeling comfortable. And the second issue or topic was around stormwater management. And again, we just had questions around the standing water and the depressions and using 100-year storm calculations versus 25. And again, they came back and satisfactorily answered those questions here tonight. So Ed, I think both of us voted in favor of the plan and the subcommittee as long as they addressed the stormwater management components, and I believe they have.
Thank you. Do the boards have any members of the board, any other questions for the applicant this evening? I can see that Ms. Wallen Jefferson saying no, no from Dr. Salzman. David has just spoken. And Mary Beth, do you have any other questions?
I do not. This is thorough. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, before I put this to a vote, I want to thank you very much for coming this evening. You've had a lot of people here. We've done a lot of speaking. And for that, I'm asking for a motion to approve the special permit for 174 Middlesex Turnpike Nordblum Company. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And I'll second.
I have a motion by Dr. Salzman, second by David McSweeney. Any other discussion at all? All in favor? David McSweeney,
Aye.
Wayne Saltzman,
Aye.
Libby Wallen-Jevitz,
Aye.
Mary Beth Welch,
Aye.
and I vote aye. 5-0. Thank you all for being here this evening. It's been a long road, but we got here.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for your time.
Thank you.
So,
You're welcome to
Thank you.
stay, but we're going to move on to a biological safety permit, 99 South Bedford Street, AMRI.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
No.
Yes. For the record, Robert Buckley, Reamer and Bronstein. I have with me this evening from the applicant, Matt Resner, who is the general manager, Eric Francis, who is the head of EHS, and Alex Shumakow, who is the biohead of manufacturing sciences and operations. I'll have them walk through their proposal and what they do and how they do it. For fear of I'd embarrass myself, but more importantly, they'd give you information to embarrass me if I tried to do it. But before I begin and turn it over to them, I would just like the chair and the members of the board to know what a tremendous job that Christine Mathis did over the last few weeks in working with the applicant to get this to where it is today. It was a huge task, and she was very responsive and very helpful in the whole process. So I want the board and the town to understand that to have that professional commitment and dialogue was extremely important. And for that, I thank her personally.
That means a lot, Mr. Buckley. Thank you. I just want to say that we at Burlington are very happy that Albany Molecular Research Incorporated is here. We're very happy that you came before us for this permit. And please, who is going to represent you for the presentation?
All three of the individuals, but Matt Resner will start. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Mr.
He's the
Buckley.
general manager.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Thanks for the time to be able to present here tonight for AMRI's biological safety permit. We got a short presentation. We're going to do a quick overview of AMRI, the relationship that AMRI and Translate Bio has. I'll turn it over to Eric. He'll go over our safety programs, waste, security, and medical surveillance. And then Alex will take us through the protocols that we had approved during our IBC in February. So very quickly, AMRI Burlington. We are located in two buildings in Burlington at 99 South Bedford and 20 Blanchard Street. You can see those pictured here. The facility at 99 South Bedford is where the manufacturing operations occur and where this permit is being requested for us. So we have about 60,000 square feet between the two facilities. We do manufacturing, warehousing, and have office space. We are a contract development and manufacturing organization, and that's where the relationship with AMRI and Translate Bio comes in. We've partnered with Translate Bio to develop this mRNA facility where we will be manufacturing for them their intellectual property from an mRNA platform, several different medicines for different indications that they've developed over time. So I will turn this over now to Eric to talk about the EH&S programs that we have.
Thanks, Matt. And thank you everyone from the board and chairman for the opportunity to speak here. So I just wanted to walk you through quickly, just talk about the environmental health and safety program. As Bob and Matt mentioned, I'm the EHS manager at the AMRI Burlington site. So first and foremost, we are committed to employee health and safety, as well as protecting our visitors, contractors, the community around us. And we're also committed to meeting any environmental programs, permits, and compliance and sustainability as well. The EHS structure, it goes beyond just Burlington. So we do have corporate oversight. So if it's something out of my expertise, we certainly have a corporate team to leverage and help us out with that. We have various EHS management software tools such as Velocity EHS and compliance, reporting, inspections. That's all kind of tracked through that tool. So, that's valuable for us to, identify hazards, making sure we're doing inspections and keeping up on the latest, compliance and, regulatory requirements for us. EHS metrics and topics. Most importantly for our EHS program to be successful is top-down support for the program. So we have that certainly, in Burlington. I sit on the site leadership team, as well as, corporate. We'll hold a weekly meeting and we have to report on the status of safety. So, the organization is committed to safety, as well as, the products that we, produce for our patients. Next slide. So I just wanted to go over quickly the training. So we have various programs in place. I could list through them all, but there's a lot of them. So I think for the board here, we have the chemical hygiene plan, laboratory safety plan, hazard communication, which covers any work with hazardous materials, chemicals. Very important, hazardous waste management. Making sure none of those materials hit waterways or exit our facility. So we have a robust program there. I'll talk about that on the next slide with, to get further into that. Personal protective equipment, making sure we have, engineering controls, administrative controls, workplace controls in place for our employees, bloodborne pathogens, biosafety, emergency procedures, our contingency plan, which we had sent over, and then of course, fire safety as well. So before anyone comes in, we have, orientation training that everyone goes through, standard training covering, health and safety from a high level standpoint, cover emergency response, your basic fire and evacuation, how to report emergencies, site security, and then, high levels of, hey, we have these materials on site, you're not going to work in those areas unless you're trained. And that's where our technical employees are, that's kind of a big bucket of our employees. So before anyone's working in a clean room or a lab and working with any of these materials, we kind of put them through a, pretty rigorous safety training to make sure they understand, how to protect themselves, what to do with waste, what personal protective equipment is required, and all that, all the above. Next slide, Matt. Waste management. So I mentioned that, we get into that more. So we contract with Veolia Environmental. We are a large quantity generator down at 99, and then up at 20, we're a very small quantity generator. So we ship weekly, just based on what we are generating, so we don't have a lot of waste sitting around on site. We are contracted for emergency response through Veolia as well, so 24 hours a day. If we have an issue, we're contracted to call them and have a professional response if we need that. Then internally, spill response, we train those folks in the labs too to know what to do if we have an emergency or release or exposure. So we have a trained team that can take care of smaller type spills, and then of course, making sure we have the emergency eye washers, safety showers, spill kits available, in the event, something like that were to occur. And then, just to hitting again more on our, our compliance initiatives here on, trainings on everything I just listed, and as well as making sure we're inspecting areas. We have various, other inspections we're doing outside the facility and everything else to make sure we're keeping the workplace safe. And just monitoring all the conditions. And next slide. Site security program. So our building is all key card access. So you are unable to walk into any part of the building or any entrance or exit without key carding in. So that requires all visitors, guests to check in at our main desk. And then we have a policy to escort, any visitor on site. So, if they're here for facilities, work or maintenance, they're being escorted by, one of our facilities folks. Once you're inside the building, there's general access to, some of the office areas. But if you're going to get into any process areas or laboratories or even our warehouse, all those areas are also badge restricted access to. So even if someone were to get in, all of our key areas are locked down and secured as well. And not only is that, secured, through granting access, but also all of our QA compliance and training that needs to be done on top of the safety training to get into those areas too. So, and then security cameras too for monitoring access. If we ever had an issue where we needed to pull footage, we have access to that as well as badging records too. Next slide. Medical surveillance. So we work with All One Health to basically take care of all our OC health needs. So we do have a medical surveillance program in place for most of our employees, like I talked about before with technical. They're doing a pre-employment exam, periodic exams, if necessary. So that could come up, in our IBC meeting, or that could be a new project with a vendor where we say, hey, maybe we do a baseline or a new baseline on some of our employees. If there is a potential exposure, of course, we offer, occupational health services to anyone that may come in contact or have a case with that. And then, of course, anyone exiting, we have an exit exam as well. So obviously, we keep those records with HR. Those are confidential. We're required to keep those for 30 years. Next. And then, Matt had mentioned, we held our first IBC meeting, in February. We voted on the protocols, which Alex will touch upon right after this. But part of that, we formed the committee, held our meeting, submitted our agenda with the meeting minute notes and everything else. So we'll be sure we, meet all those requirements, which is at least annual, unless we have another, project that comes up that requires the committee to kind of kick into play. But everyone listed, Matt's on the call, who co-chairs the committee with Alex. I serve as a biosafety officer. We also have John, who's works with Translate Bio as well as the associate director of process development. Dennis, who's senior director at Tech Office Facilities. And then, of course, like we said, we're very grateful for Christine and helping us get to this point. And then also Jim for volunteering his time to serve on our committee as well. So that wraps up my portion. If Alex wants to speak to the protocols.
You are on mute, please. Please unmute yourself. You're still on mute. Sarah, can we unmute him?
He is unmuted. I'm not sure if he's having technical issues with the microphone.
Okay.
Say in 1 minute. And like I mentioned before, we did vote on these protocols, so they were, reviewed and approved in February.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my high-tech earphones weren't working very well. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the board, for the time this evening and getting us on the agenda on relatively short notice. So I'll just go quickly through the approved protocols that the IBC met and reviewed about a week and a half ago or so. We have two. The first one is called MRT 1003 and 4005. It's a BSL-1 program. It is a clinical phase 2 therapeutic for the production of mRNA, which is encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle for when delivered to a patient will induce production of cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator, which in the lungs of cystic fibrosis patients. That's an enzyme that helps break up and clear mucus in your lungs in normal healthy patients. Cystic fibrosis patients lack the ability to make that enzyme, and therefore they build up a lot of mucus and henceforth the disease. So again, our therapeutic mRNA is intended to restore normal production of that CFTR protein in CF patients. The second program that we have is clinical phase 3 production of mRNA encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle, again, that will induce production of the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, very similar to the Pfizer vaccine as well as the Moderna vaccine. Administration of the vaccine will in turn cause the body's immune system to mount a response to the COVID-19 virus, thereby acquiring immunity to that virus. Again, very, very similar to the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. Again, the IBC met a few weeks ago, reviewed both of these programs, and was approved. Both these programs were approved at that meeting.
Good. Do we have any questions at all? First, our staff. Christine, I know you worked on this very hard. Thank you so much for doing this. Chris, do you have any other questions, Christine?
I don't. I've spent a lot of time going through their plans and protocols, all the ones that Eric mentioned, HAZCOM, safety, environmental plan, etc. And they've answered my questions, and they answered the questions of the IBC. As mentioned, both Jim Harrison and myself were in attendance, and our members on their IBC, and we're part of the approval for these two protocols.
Well, thank you. When you told me about this a couple of weeks ago, I never thought that be able to get everything together, but we did it. We did it because we want to ensure that companies in this community, good companies, and we'll be able to expedite approvals, and thank you all for working so hard. We did it in record time. Susan Luminello, anything else?
No questions.
Marlene Johnson?
No questions.
Okay, and members of the board, do we have any questions? Dr. Saltzman?
So I just wanted to confirm I see these two products are BSL 1. Does the laboratory have any other BSL? Well, let me put it this way: is the limit to this laboratory BSL 2 or BSL 3?
So yeah, we don't have any BSL. Our labs are designed to a biosafety level 2.
Right.
However, we have no agents even in a biosafety 2. It's all biosafety level 1. So
great. Thank you. Just confirming.
Libby Wallen-Jeffers, do you have any questions? Okay. Mary Beth?
I do not. Thanks, Ed.
I have only one question and one comment. The first question is, when will you have any idea when you're going to go into human trials for the vaccine?
Yeah, so we expect you'll be hearing some news about that within the next several weeks.
Oh, that would be great. And hopefully, if we have another pandemic, the town of Burlington would be able to contract with you directly rather than have to go through all of the craziness and chaos in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm just putting that bug in your ear. So
we'd love to be able to do that.
I thank you. And I have one more comment. I just want to thank Mr. Buckley. I know his leadership provides a lot of direction to proponents about getting what they need to get together and expediting approvals. And that not only helps you, but also helps us. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment? Can I get a copy of the tape? Because I think in 30 years, I don't think I've ever had that from you. So,
well, I know we tease each other quite a bit, and you tease us, this board, quite a bit. But it was very clear that the direction you provided, both this company and earlier companies, was very helpful to get us everything we needed in a timely fashion. Thank you. So
appreciate it. Thank you.
With that, if there are no other questions, I'd open this up to a motion.
So moved.
So I have a motion to approve the biological safety permit for 99 South Bedford Street, AMRI, Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Libby Wallenjevitz. Any other comments? Then I'll put it to a vote. Mr. McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman,
Aye.
Ms. Wallenjevitz,
Aye.
Ms. Mary Beth Welch,
Aye.
and I vote aye, 5-0. Now, we're past. Thank you very much for being here. We're very happy you are in this community. Christine, what happens next? Do you send them out a permit and they don't have to present anymore unless there are major changes? Is that correct?
That's correct. I'll issue them a permit probably tomorrow, and they will, the renewal procedure under the biological safety regulations is that if major protocols if there are no new protocols and major programs don't change, they don't have to appear before the Board of Health. If those changes occur, they would come back, upon those changes or for next year's renewal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. First of all, thank you for the time of the board this evening and the thoughtfulness. Thank you, Christine, again. And I have one ask of the board, and that is that everyone stay healthy. Thank you.
Be safe, be healthy. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Good luck.
Our next is a variance for Eddie V's. Do we have a representative from Eddie V's here, please?
Yes, hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Greekwood. I'm the managing partner of Eddie V's.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry you had to wait so long. Presenting will be Marlene Johnson, our health agent. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Thank
is
you so much.
correct. Certainly. So representatives from Eddie V's are here this evening to request a variance to use a cook-chill process, which is a form of reduced oxygen packaging to cook food. Then they bag the food. Now it's hot. And then they chill the food that's hot. And then once it's chilled, it's stored under refrigeration. And they will be using this process for approximately 8 different sauces. They provided me with a HACCP plan. That's a hazardous analysis of critical control point plan, which I reviewed it. And I saw the logs that they plan to use. And so with that, my recommendation to the board is to approve the variance with the following conditions. And those conditions are 1 through 5. If you want me to read them, let me know, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. Would you please read them?
So those conditions are, number 1 is the HACCP plan shall be followed and use of logs as described in the HACCP plan shall be used, and logs will be kept on site for inspection. The HACCP plan shall be reviewed annually by the management, the restaurant management, and initialed by the person in charge at the restaurant. If there are any changes, those changes shall be submitted to the health department. The variance is for the establishment listed on the variance and for no other location. The variance is approved for the current ownership of the restaurant and is non-transferable to new ownership. And any violations of this variance may result in a temporary suspension of the cook-chill operation, and continued violations may result in the revocation of the variance.
Mr. Greekwood, do you clearly understand all of these, Rick, all of these conditions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I do fully understand it. And I would just further, I would just tell you that one of our sister restaurants has been approved for the same variance recently, and myself and my team will receive proper training prior to us actually implementing this process.
And please keep the logs current. That's where you get in trouble. I open this up to any questions or any comments from our Board of Health.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one question, I guess, for Marlene, and thank you, Marlene. We did, and I believe it was probably about a year ago, we approved another, I think it's Darden Group restaurant for this process, correct? And with COVID, it might not have been fully rolled out, or maybe it has been. Have we had any issues or any experience, because I know this was the first restaurant that we approved this for in the
Right,
town of Burlington. Do you have any comments or issues or anything like that since they rolled it out?
No, in fact, that was the sister restaurant that Mr. Creekwood was referring to, which is Yard House. And we haven't had any issues, and they've been inspected since, and all the logs were in order. So I don't anticipate any problems.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Anybody else? If not, I can entertain a motion.
So moved to accept or to approve the variance.
I have a motion to approve the variance for Eddie V's 50 South Avenue for reduced oxygen packaging, ROP. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Welch. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll put to a vote. All in favor? Mr. McSweeney.
Aye.
Dr. Salzman.
Aye.
Ms. Wallenjevitz.
Aye.
Ms. Welch.
Aye.
And I vote aye, 5-0. Mr. Creekwood, thank you very much and we wish you the best.
Very much, Mr. Chairman and the board. We look forward to seeing you in the restaurant soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Staff reports. We're there. Health agent. I have asked our health agent, who we have the luxury of having here this evening. We don't always get a chance to have her, to quickly go over one of the documents that she provided us on COVID-19 update, USDA, FDA _current epidemiological and scientific information indicating no transmission of COVID-19 through food or food packaging.
So this was updated in February of this year, and I still on occasion get questions from citizens about this. So I'll just read a little bit from the document. So despite the billions of meals and food packages handled since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, to date, there has not been any evidence that food packaging, or food handling is a source or important transmission route for COVID-19. There were people asking if they should wipe down all of their packaged foods that they pick up from the supermarket. Should they disinfect the packages? And so there's evidence that that's not necessary. As long as folks are washing their hands before they're handling any of the packages, before they're preparing any food in their home, that's the best advice that we can give them.
Thank you, Marlene. I get those questions all the time. In fact, I remember at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, my wife had me outside wiping down groceries before I could drag them upstairs. So thank you. I'm sure we all get those questions. Questions for the, do you have anything to report first?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I do. So we are underway with the mobile food establishment or mobile food truck permit renewal. I've already had 2 people contact me who plan to renew their food trucks this year. And then today I received an inquiry for a food truck as well. So that's good news. Construction has started back up at the Burlington Mall. As you know, there's several restaurants that are going to be opening within the next 6 months or so. I have a pre-operation inspection next week for Karma. That's at the Burlington Mall. I have a walkthrough this week at Halal Shack, which is a little sandwich shop where the Burlington Cold Cut Center used to be. And there's going to be a small grocery store at 120 Cambridge Street, Nina Bazaar. And I have a pre-operation this week for that grocery store. So things are looking up. I'm expecting some plan reviews over the next 2 months for 3 to 4 food establishments. And Samantha Hardy and I are finishing up routine inspections so that it's been a tough year with COVID, and we're at least going to make sure that we've hit every single food establishment at least 1 routine inspection during the fiscal year. So we don't see any problem that we won't be able to do that. Any questions?
Any questions for our health agent?
Yes, Mr.
Maribeth.
Chair. Hi, Marlene. I just,
Hi.
hi, thank you for your report. Under the corresponding phone calls, there was discussion with the planning board for shared kitchens. Can you just explain what is that shared kitchens a little bit about?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we had heard that there was going to be a new concept going over to, I believe, let me see who that was.
I think it was Island Creek, right, Marlene?
Yeah, Island Creek Oyster Bar, who's changing their name, by the way, to Row 34. And so they have put on the menu just some tacos. They're going to do some tacos. And so we thought that they were going to be using a shared kitchen concept where somebody other than their ownership would be leasing or renting the kitchen. So that would be considered a shared kitchen. It is allowed per the food code, but they have to have a separate permit, and we have to have some sort of an agreement with the restaurant. So as it turns out, the Island Creek Oyster Bar, it's their own concept. So it's not a shared kitchen as we thought it might have been. But that's what a shared kitchen is. We don't have any currently in Burlington, but it's something that is up and coming. So we could see that.
It is. Thanks, Marlene, for explaining
You're
that.
welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions for the health agent? If not, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff report for the health agent.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the health agent's report, second by, I guess it was Mary Beth Welch. You won. You hit the buzzer first.
All of us.
All in favor? Mr. McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Salzman,
Aye.
Ms. Wallen-Jevitz,
Aye.
Ms. Welch.
Aye.
And I vote aye, 5-0. Environmental engineer. Christine, you've been a very busy professional to this evening.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for everything.
Sure. Well, as you can see from the first two applicants tonight, this report, since my prior report, I've been spending a lot of time on those two applications. The application for AMRI was in excess of 200 pages that required review. And there was a lot of history to go through for 174 Middlesex Turnpike. In addition to that, I've responded to several COVID complaints, followed up on several COVID positive employees from Burlington employers, and also been doing planning for the spring household hazardous waste event, which it looks like is going to be on May 1st. I'm just firming that up with final vendor right now. And I'll take any questions anybody has.
Any questions for the environmental engineer? I have a number of them.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I couldn't get off mute. I just.
Yeah, me too. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, this is not about your report. I just was driving by, and I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I was driving by the old Burlington Auto Parts there on Cambridge Street, and noticed that they do have, and it's not, we're in warmer temperature now, but certainly there's water flowing like a stream out into Cambridge Street. So it just made me think of that project and also the one at the Wendy's parking lot. And I just don't want to, and I know we have a bunch going on, I just don't want to lose sight of those and ensure that we're on top of those as soon as the thaw kind of breaks here in the spring to make sure that those do get done, because it's been a number of years, at least for the auto parts store.
We are, and thank you for reminding me of those. Just earlier today, I was discussing the auto parts store with other town departments.
Great.
What used to be the auto parts store at the front of that building. They have final approval from DOT to implement the system that was reviewed by the board a year and a half ago. And they also need site plan approval from planning.
Hmm.
So that has not been filed for yet, but the planning is in discussions with that applicant. I did actively monitor that site during the winter time, and they were diligently on top of icing that facility to avoid the sort of massive ice problems we saw in the past into the lane on Cambridge Street and on the sidewalk. So I did not have any, nuisance violations to issue. So that's the update on that project. And happy to report that the 101 Middlesex Turnpike, large puddle, they're starting the dredging and rehabbing of that whole detention system and discharge to the Vine Brook on March 8th.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for both of those updates. I appreciate it.
And I'm sorry I forgot to mention those.
No, that's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the reminder.
Anybody else?
Oh, Christine, Mr. Chair, Christine, I just had one in regards to your training, the EPA ventilation and virus controls in the school. Is that new training?
So it's something I started participating in when we were over the summer when we were assisting the schools with getting ready to go back to class and getting their classrooms ready. And we were, if you recall, we were reviewing HVAC reports issued by their professionals. And just to keep up my education on that, I've been attending those EPA offered seminars here and there.
Great. Thank you.
Libby, anything? Dr. Wayne? I have a few. First of all, what's going on with the Leahy helideck? I haven't heard anything until I saw it in your report.
So it's a very modest change to the facility over at Leahy. They are installing a helideck near the new and current emergency room, and they'll be doing limited excavation because it's an elevated helideck, so they'll just be installing the supports for that. And then there will be a walkway connecting that to the second floor, the second floor of the back of the building itself. And so there wasn't much to review in terms of what was going on over there. There was no change in stormwater. They are not going to, impact anything at the site in any major manner. And they will not be doing they will not be storing or doing any fueling at the site. The helicopters operate out of Hanscom, and it will simply be for patient delivery.
Will we have to approve any of that?
I did staff comments on it.
Okay, thank
Because it
you.
was minor in nature.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The next is sub-slab sampling. 179 Middlesex Turnpike. What are they sampling?
So Marlene and I met with them because that's currently the Papagino's restaurant. And
Okay.
that's the site of the very historic Mercury cleaners, dry cleaners that operated in the 50s and 60s, and the source of contamination at that site and in groundwater in the area. So they've done extensive groundwater sampling and mapping, and they've done soil vapor testing around the building at Papagino's. They've done indoor air quality testing inside the building, and that has been consistently okay in terms of the DEP standards. Most recently, they found some elevated levels in soil vapor outside of the building footprint. So they now want to determine if there is similar concentrations in soil vapor under that building. Even though they're not experiencing indoor air quality issues, they want to map out where the what the extent of that contamination is. And that's going to involve drilling through the floor of that restaurant during non-operating hours.
Thank you. Now, I know you and I talked a little bit about, I think this is the project that's before the Board of Appeals, the Windview Heights 2. Is that the project?
Yes, it is.
At some point, will you be giving an update to this board and maybe a special meeting?
So yeah, I'll be giving an update. They still, we reviewed this at the development coordination meeting, or maybe with the town departments had a separate meeting last week or the week before. And the applicant still owes the zoning board of appeals a full application.
So we know we're close.
No, they have to answer some responses to town council, and they have to file complete stormwater, which they haven't done. So there's nothing for us to review at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. When you want a special, I'll call a special meeting if necessary for that project, because it's so atypical and it's so different. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And the last is 40% of Wegmans is 1,088 people. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve the environmental engineer's report?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Saltzman, second by Mr. McSweeney. All in favor? Mr. McSweeney?
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman?
Aye.
Libby Wallen-Jevitz?
Aye.
Mary Beth Welch?
Aye.
And I vote aye, 5-0. And last, the Director of Public Health, who I know has been so busy and probably tired of talking to me every day.
I just have a couple of updates. So next week, I just want to update you on the COVID-19 vaccination clinics. Convenient MD will be coming on Wednesday and will be giving the second dose to that 100 seniors that they gave the first dose to 28 days prior. Also, we partnered with the senior housing, the Birchcrest, Tower Hill and Birchcrest Housing, the Housing Authority, and received 100 doses from the state to vaccinate their population. So we're going to be doing a clinic on Thursday for them. And I'm told that we are guaranteed the second doses for that clinic. So I expect to do another clinic 28 days later. I'm also on the phone call today. We were told that second doses for those clinics will ship automatically. So that's what we have planned for the COVID-19 clinics at this point.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our Director of Public Health?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
And not necessarily what's on your report, Susan. Again, Susan, thank you for and your time and efforts through these last year and ongoing. I appreciate it. I noticed or heard today that there is a plan for going back to school full time. It looks like April 5th is elementary schools. That was just announced this afternoon. And I'm assuming, while we don't own the plan, we'll be intimately involved in ensuring, at least making recommendations that the safety of the students come first. I don't know if you have any thoughts or if you had any conversations with the school department on that. So
I haven't had any conversations with the school department because the guidance has just come out. And so our input, I think, we can certainly provide them with recommendations, but they are required to follow the DESE guidance, which was sent to us today. There's certain things in there about lunchtime. Kids have to be 6 feet apart during lunch, although they can be 3 feet apart during, in the classroom with masks on. So there's different requirements in the DESE regulations that the schools are going to have to adhere to. And I think that they're working on their plans right now as far as how they are going to adhere to these standards that just came out today.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know it's early, right? It's hot off the presses, so they have a lot of work to do between now and then. And again, maybe recommendation was the wrong word for me to use. I do think that we should have, similar to when we open up the schools in September, we certainly reviewed the plan, we made comments, and or if we had any concerns, they were addressed. And I would think that we would go through the same process as that.
Yeah,
Any, go
well,
ahead.
part of what we had, recommended back when we went through this before was to keep kids the 6 feet apart or as much 6 feet apart as you can, so that way, if one of them gets COVID, then that's less kids that's going to have to quarantine or would potentially get exposed. But the DESE standards say 3 feet. Number one. Number two is they can't get all the kids back into the schools using that 6 foot standard. So
I
they
agree.
have to get all the kids back into the schools. So, I mean, I think that's one thing that they're going to have to work through. And
Right.
I'm sure we'll be meeting with them and having discussions with them. And it would probably be a good idea to have the Board of Health and the school committee subcommittee meet again. Because, if just because we may, end up quarantining more kids and what is their, are they going to move forward with closing down entire classrooms and that type of thing? Like what exactly they should review with us what their plans are once they get them all ironed out.
Correct. And I think that's what I was getting at. It's their plan. They should devise it the way that they can successfully manage it and getting the kids back to school safely and ensuring safety for everybody. But again, I would be eager to ensure that we're working closely with them to address any concerns that we may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks, Susan.
Yeah, one of the things about that is we're going to have to continue to work closely with them because we're going to have cases in the schools. That has continued. It hasn't stopped, even though the number of cases has gone down recently. It's likely going to continue. So we do have to continue the relationship with the schools and working together and how we're going to, isolate and quarantine kids.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's probably even going to be more difficult trying to bring the high school all back, which looks like later in April, than it is elementary, right? So it's going to be difficult for sure.
One thing about that plan that I just wanted to point out is that they do have to adhere to the schedule outlined by DESE, but parents will have a choice and they can decide whether or not they want to keep their kids remote or send them back to school. And one of the things that the schools are supposed to do quickly, they're going to have to do quickly, and when they're making their plans, is to survey the parents to find out what parents would like to do. Kids remote, send them back.
Any other questions? I have a couple. Susan, why don't you, since we're talking about the schools, maybe you want to mention the communications we had with Mr. Conti this week, over the weekend?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, Superintendent Conti is very eager to get the teachers vaccinated, and reached out to us, has been continuing to reach out to us about vaccination. And unfortunately, we had to tell him that our hands are tied in this, that we can't provide vaccination because of the state's decision not to allocate to us. We did update him on the ways in which we've tried to spotlight this issue, and also reached out to our representatives and suggested that maybe him and his colleagues in the school committee do the same to put some pressure and help the DPH understand that it would be so much easier for the Board of Health to vaccinate all the teachers. We could get it done in one day on a Friday, so that they could be back in school on Monday. If we just had the vaccine. The expectation is there may be about 800 teachers that would need to be done, and we could get them done in a day.
That's perfect. I said to him, I thought that our MRC, our supervisory nurse, with the help of the school nurses, could do it immediately as soon as we got the vaccine. And I asked him and reiterated that he really needs to get his colleagues, superintendents of schools, together and demand the vaccine for local boards of health. And as you know, our governor has ignored that. And last question I have for you, Susan, is you had a. I know I've been following this, but the MRC budget modification submitted to Cambridge Health Alliance. Maybe you should just make a quick comment on Cambridge Health Alliance and the MRC.
Sure. So Cambridge Health Alliance is, I guess, sort of a subcontractor to the state to oversee. It's kind of like a middle person between boards of MRC leaders and the state to submit budgets. So all our budgets and modifications for our budgets are submitted to Cambridge Health Alliance. They review them, and then they go to the MRC, the state MRC program. Recently, because this year we haven't been able to do any trainings, in our original budget, we had put in that we were going to do trainings, and then we were hit with COVID. We couldn't do those trainings. A lot of those plans fell through. So I did a budget modification and requested iPads to use PrepMod for our MRC volunteers to use PrepMod in the event that we could vaccinate. And I'm hoping that, as the vaccine becomes more readily available, they will then allocate to boards of health so that we can also be vaccinating people, as we've been training to do for the last 10 years. So that's why I put in that that request for the iPads for the MRC budget.
Thank you. And if no other questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the Director of Public Health report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Salzman, second by Ms. Welch. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor. Mr. McSweeney.
Aye.
Dr. Salzman.
Aye.
Ms. Wallendrevitz.
Aye.
Ms. Welch.
Aye.
And I vote aye, 5-0. I want to thank everybody tonight. We had over 300 pages or so to review for this meeting. We've gone 2 minutes less than 2 hours. We are all very, very busy. I want to thank the staff that I know are working so much overtime and doing what they need to do. Thank you all, and be well, be safe. Before I put ask for a motion I'm going to ask Dr. Salzman, as he always does during these times, to give us a couple of words of wisdom.
Mr. Chair, before you do that, I think Susan's raising her hand for
Susan.
something. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to let the chairman know that Ms. Sheehan is on the line. I don't know if you want to.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I invited her here.
Okay.
Why don't we just listen to Mr. and I'll introduce Andrea Sheehan, but Dr. Salzman, parting words.
I just, at this time, any other year we would be talking about the flu, and the flu, because of vaccinations for the flu, because of the precautions that we've taken, masks and hand washing. Right now in this country, 7 people per 1 million people are hospitalized. 10 years ago, when we had what was considered a very low flu rate, but we still had flu, but considered very low, it was 2.5 times the amount that we have now. And so we have shown that when you add vaccination plus things like masks and hand washing and keeping our distance and quarantining and self-isolating, we can do a lot of good. So let's take that and continue to apply it to what's happening today. People are getting vaccinated. That's fantastic. Keep wearing your mask. Keep washing your hands. keep the distancing. Please, 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 try to maintain what we've become so good at, so that next year we won't have to. And thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Salzman. I'd like to introduce Andrea Sheehan. If she can come off of mute, it would be very nice. She will be the successor to Libby Wallingevitz, who will be retiring from the Board of Health after many, many years of providing value to the community. Andrea, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. It's nice to join. I was trying to be quiet in the background just because this is my first session, and a lot of this was obviously new for me, but I'm very excited to be joining the board in April, and it's really been an interesting evening. So thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you.
You're welcome. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to call on any of us, any of our staff, any of us on the board. Welcome to call me. We spoke on Sunday. So thank you for being with us tonight. I know it was kind of complicated this evening.
I'm sure I'll be calling everybody with questions, but I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Salzman, second by David McSweeney. I got to call a roll call. David.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Libby.
Aye.
Mary Beth.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Good night, everybody. Stay safe. Stay well. 5-0. Long meeting. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.